There was a moment, quiet but powerful, when hip-hop and soul reconnected with something ancient, something spiritual. In the late 1990s, as commercial rap dominated radio and R&B grew glossier by the day, a small circle of artists stepped back from the spotlight and dove inward. They called themselves the Soulquarians, but they weren't a label or even an official group. They were a movement of minds, a collective of producers, poets, drummers, and dreamers bound together by a rhythm, rebellion, and a love for real instrumentation. It started at Electric Lady Studios, the legendary space Jimi Hendrix built and used. Hendrix only spent 10 weeks recording in Electric Lady Studios before his death early in that year of 1970. The studio was also used by many iconic artists like Led Zeppelin, Stevie Wonder, Lou Reed, Hall & Oates, the Rolling Stones, John Lennon, and David Bowie, where wood-paneled walls soaked up decades of soul. Inside those walls, artists gathered from Philadelphia, Detroit, New York, and beyond. They came with no contracts, no agendas, just a shared belief that music could be alive again. At the center was a triangle of geniuses, D'Angelo, Questlove, and J Dilla, orbiting on one another like planets in alignment. Around them, Erykah Badu, Common, Bilal, Q-Tip, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, The Roots, James Poyser, Roy Hargrove, and Pino Palladino. From 1999 to 2004, this collective birthed a body of work that redefined the genre. Albums that felt timeless the moment they dropped. The drums swung off grid, the bass lines breathed, the voices cracked. It was soul with dirt under its nails. But like all great collectives, from the native tongues before them to every movement that burned too bright, the Soulquarians' light couldn't last forever. Label politics, egos, exhaustion, and tragedy would eventually pull the circle apart. This is the story of the Soulquarians, a story about rhythm, resistance, and rebirth, about how a group of musicians changed the sound of a generation and reminded the world what it means to have soul. Before the Soulquarians reshaped music at the turn of the millennium, there was another family tree, one rooted in love, lyricism, and community. It was called the Native Tongues Movement. The late 1980s and early 1990s were hip-hop's adolescence, raw, loud, rebellious, and rapidly evolving. But among the street anthems and hardcore narratives, a new vibration emerged, positive, creative, and spiritually grounded. The Jungle Brothers, De La Soul, and A Tribe Called Quest, Black Sheep, Money Love, and Queen Latifah all laid the foundation. Their music wasn't just about rhymes, it was about freedom. They sampled jazz, funk, and African rhythms, dressed in vibrant colors, and preached individuality. They called themselves the Native Tongues, symbolizing a return to authenticity, to blackness, intellect, and cultural pride. Their message was unity through rhythm and love through lyricism. The Native Tongues also took their name from a line in the song African Cry by Motown offshoot funk group New Birth, which features the lyrics, "Took away our native tongues." Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, a young drummer named Amir Questlove Thompson and rapper Tariq Black Thought Charter were learning to bring live instrumentation into hip-hop while they were both attending the Philadelphia High School for the Creative and Performing Arts. They originally got together in 1987, but they still weren't going by or known as the Roots. In 1989, Questlove will be playing the drums on a bucket on the corners of Philly, while Black Thought will spit rhymes over the beat. In the same year, they will perform at their very first gig and will go by Radioactivity. Then they would go on to change their name multiple times from Black to the Future and to the Square Roots. Entering the 1990s, they will later add another MC called Malik B and a bass player Leonard Hub Hubbard to the group. However, in 1992, they will have to change their name again and drop the Square from the Square Roots due to another group already claiming that name, which led to the Roots officially changing their name to the Roots. In 1993, the Roots self-released their debut studio album, or their album in general, called Organics. The album was sold during shows in Europe and eventually generated enough buzz for the group to start getting major offers from major record labels. And later, they would sign a record deal with DCG, aka Geffen Records. Inspired by the same musical ideals as the Native Tongues, the Wu-Tang Clan, and the Sonics, groove, intellect, and musical craftsmanship. But where the Native Tongues built their world from samplers and vinyl, the Roots built their ideas from real instruments. On January 17th, 1995, the Roots released their debut studio album, Do You Want More? The album debuted at number 22 on the Billboard US Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart and number 2 on the US Heat Seekers albums, and at 104 on the Billboard's US Top 200. While they were recording Do You Want More, they added a beatboxer named Rozelle and a keyboardist named Scott Storch, and the two added depth to the entire band's sound. On September 24th, 1996, the Roots will release their second album, Philadelphia Half-Life. The album received 4.5 mics on the Source and good critical reception from other critics and media sources alike. The album debuted at number 21 on the US Billboard 200 and number 4 on the R&B and Hip Hop Albums chart and sold a total of 350,000 copies in the US alone. Also, during this time, Scott Storch had left the group and was replaced by another keyboardist named Kamal Gray. Like I said before, the groups were heavily inspired by the Wu-Tang Clan, and so during 1996, that's when the group's production and sound started to take a darker turn. Around the same time, in Richmond, Virginia, a young prodigy named D'Angelo was carving out new sound in R&B. He grew up on the south side of Richmond, Virginia, and he was just 3 years old when he started playing the piano. Around 1988, he would make a group with his brother Luther called Precise, and they would perform on the Apollo Theater in Harlem. After winning Amateur Night 3 nights in a row in 1991 at just 17 years old, he would use the prize money, which was $500, to buy himself a keyboard and a 4-track recorder so he could start recording his own demos. He also joined a group called IDU, which stands for Intelligent, Deadly, but Unique. The group will put out a demo tape, and that will fall into the hands of Jocelyn Cooper. Jocelyn Cooper will later hear this tape from the group and later will sign D'Angelo to Midnight Songs LLC, which was her publishing company under Universal Music Publishing Group. Jocelyn Cooper will later introduce D'Angelo to Raphael Sadiq, Ali Shaheed, and Angie Stone to collaborate and songwrite together. She will also introduce D'Angelo to Fred Davis, who was head A&R, and Gary Harris of EMI Music. And after a successful audition, D'Angelo will sign his first record contract. At just 18 years old, D'Angelo dropped out of high school and moved to New York City to solely focus on his craft of songwriting, accumulating compositions, and basically developing his own music career. D'Angelo was inspired to make his own album and make music. Now, this is where things start to go uphill for D'Angelo. In 1994, he wrote and produced the song You Will Know for the all-male black R&B supergroup Black Men United. The group features some of the most iconic singers we all know today, such as Brian McKnight, R. Kelly, Tevin Campbell, Gerald Levert, Aaron Hall, and Tony Tone. The song was featured on the movie Jason's Lyric and peaked at number 5 on the US R&B Hip Hop Songs and at number 28 on the US Billboard's Hot 100. A year later, his debut album, Brown Sugar, released on July 3rd of 1995. The album fused gospel, funk, and hip-hop, music that felt classic yet raw. Brown Sugar debuted at number 6 on the US Billboard's top R&B albums chart and sold over 300,000 copies in its first 2 months. With the help of his 4 singles, Lady, Brown Sugar, Cruisin', and Being Those Dreamin' Eyes of Mine, the album spent 65 weeks on the Billboard 200 chart and received platinum certification within a year of its release. Brown Sugar also received great reception from every media source and critics alike, and also received 4 mics or 4 stars from the Source magazine. Brown Sugar has been credited by writers and music critics for providing commercial visibility to the emerging neo-soul movement of the mid-1990s, as well as inspiration behind the coinage of the term neo-soul. The album birthed a movement that press will soon call neo-soul, led by artists like Erykah Badu, Maxwell, and of course, Lauryn Hill. In a 1996 article from the Chicago Tribune, critic Craig Cott cited Brown Sugar as arguably where the current soul revival started. Now, I do want to take some time to mention some of the great music that was released after Brown Sugar. On April 2nd, 1996, Maxwell released his debut studio album, Maxwell's Urban Hang Suite. Maxwell did most of the writing and production himself around various studios, including Electric Lady Studios. The album wasn't an immediate success, but due to its hit song and second single from the album, Ascension, Don't Ever Wonder, which released in July of 1996, the album went on to sell millions and go 2 times platinum. On February 11, 1997, Erykah Badu released her debut studio album, Baduism. Before this, Erykah Badu dropped out of university to pursue music full-time, and she went on tour with her cousin, Robert Free Bradford. She also recorded a 19-song demo tape, which eventually landed in the hands of Kadar Massenberg, and he would set her up with D'Angelo and they recorded a duet called Your Precious Love, which will lead her to signing a record deal or record contract with Universal Records. Her debut album, Badu, sold over 159,000 copies in its first week and peaked at number 2 on the US Billboard's top R&B hip-hop albums chart and at number 20 on the US Billboard 200. Badu made Erykah Badu a popular artist, and the album garnered positive reviews from music critics and media sources, and her style led to many people drawing comparisons to Billie Holiday. In 1997, she received 6 nominations and won 3 for Favorite Female Solo Single from On and On, Favorite Female Solo Album for Badu, and Best R&B Soul or Rap Song of the Year for On and On. And this all took place at the Soul Train Lady of Soul Awards. In 1998, Badu received 14 nominations and won 8, including Favorite R&B Soul or Rap New Artist at the American Music Awards, Best Female R&B Vocal Performance for On and On, Outstanding Female Artist at the NAACP Image Awards, Favorite Female Soul R&B Single for On and On, Favorite Female Soul R&B Album for Badu, and Favorite New R&B Soul or Rap New Artist for On and On at the Soul Train Music Awards. In 1998, at the 40th Grammy Awards, Erykah Badu was nominated for awards: Best New Artist, Best R&B Song, Best R&B Female Vocal Performance, and Best R&B Album. She ended up walking away with 2 Grammys for Best R&B Album and Best R&B Female Vocal Performance. As of now, the album is 3 times platinum. Now, in 1998, one of the greatest albums ever was released, and it was released by Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill released The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill on August 25th in 1998. She wrote and produced most of the album herself, which explains why it did so well and is considered to be the #1 album of all time. She recorded the album at various studios around New York and New Jersey, and then ultimately decided to record the rest of the album in Tough Gong Studios in Kingston, Jamaica. The album debuted at #1 on the US Billboard 200 and the US Billboard's top R&B hip-hop albums chart, selling 422,000 copies in its first week and eventually going platinum. And as of 2025, the album is 10 times platinum, meaning it's officially certified diamond album. On release, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill was met with widespread critical acclaim. At the 1998 Billboard Music Awards, the album won R&B Album of the Year based on its performance on the Billboard's chart. Hill was among the biggest winners at the 1999 NAACP Image Awards, with 4 awards including Outstanding Albums for The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill and the President's Award for Special Achievement in furthering the cause of civil rights and public service. Hill's 10 nominations at the 41st Annual Grammy Awards marked the most Grammy Award nominations in a single ceremony for a woman. Winning 5 awards, Hill became the female artist with the most wins in a single ceremony. Among the awards was the Album of the Year for The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which marked the first time a hip-hop artist won the award. The album also won Best R&B Album, while Hill won Best New Artist. So big ups to Maxwell, Erykah Badu, and Lauryn Hill. They all trailblazed the way for neo soul by putting out monster debut albums, and to D'Angelo for igniting the genre to be popularized. Now, before we head into the next chapter, a key person is yet to be mentioned, and he is one of the founding fathers of the Soulquarians. His name is J Dilla. He emerged from the mid-1990s underground hip-hop scene in Detroit, Michigan as a member of the group called Slum Village. He is a huge part of the Soulquarians and played a key role to crafting the sound and producing some of the most classic and timeless songs that we all know and love today. By the late 1990s, the creative energy of black music had started to feel mechanical. Labels started chasing radio hits, producers recycled formulas, and the soul that once defined the sound of a generation was being replaced by polish and precision. But in the middle of New York City, inside Electric Lady Studios, a quiet revolution was beginning. It began with 3 men, but each from different cities, but driven by the same pulse. Amir Questlove Thompson, drummer and musical architect of The Roots, Michael D'Angelo Archer, the reclusive genius of modern soul, and James DeWitt J. Delancey, the Detroit producer whose swung and sample choices had redefined hip-hop rhythm. The name of the collective is derived from an astrology sign Aquarius, which is shared birth sign of the founding members of the collective, Questlove, D'Angelo, and J Dilla. It's also believed that Questlove encountered J Dilla at the 1995 Source Awards, even though tensions were tremendous between the East Coast and the West Coast. Also, around this time, Welsh bassist Pino Palladino developed a connection over their mutual love of Motown and other classic soul music. There in 1997, D'Angelo and Questlove prepared to record Voodoo at the studio. The collective sessions there over the next 5 years resulted in the Roots album Things Fall Apart and Phrenology. Badu's second album Mob Was Gun, Commons Like Water for Chocolate, and Electric Circus, and singer Bilal's debut album Firstborn Second. Questlove had already been used on Electric Lady Studio as a creative base for the Roots Things Fall Apart sessions. He brought in his close friend and bandmate James Poyser, a Philly keyboardist with a gospel background and a deep understanding of chord theory. When D'Angelo began recording what would become Voodoo, the sessions overlapped. Musicians drifted from one studio to another, ideas bleeding between projects. J Dilla's influence radiated across sessions. His drums didn't just hit on the grid, they leaned, stumbled, dancing between time. The offbeat swing became the backbone of the Soulquarian sound. Even when J Dilla wasn't in the room, his touch guided everything. Questlove adjusted his live drumming to emulate Dilla's MPC timing. That synergy between machine precision and live feel became their signature. They didn't realize it then, but what they were building at Electric Lady was bigger than any one album. They were building an ecosystem, a community bound by groove and shared purpose. At the heart of the Soulquarian story lies not just the people, but the music, a sequence of albums that define an entire genre or era of black creativity at the turn of the new millennium. Between 1998 and 2001, the Soulquarians didn't just make records, they built a movement. Each album felt like a new chapter in a shared universe, all born out of the same late night jam sessions at the Electric Lady Studios, all connected by a sense of groove, soul, and experimentation. Now, we're going to be breaking down every single album by release date and order. Let's start with the first album that set it all off, The Roots, Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart is the fourth studio album that The Roots released. The album released on February 23rd in 1999 and debuted at number 4 on the Billboard US 200 and at number 2 on the US Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart, selling over 500,000 copies and eventually going platinum. Things Fall Apart is considered the Roots' breakout album due to the high praise from critics and music fans alike. The song You Got Me won a Grammy Award at the 2000 Grammy Award for Best Rap Performance by Duo or Group, while Things Fall Apart was also nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Rap Album of the same year, losing to Eminem. All music critic Steve Huey hailed Things Fall Apart as one of the cornerstone albums of alternative rap, believing that it was the point where the Roots' tremendous potential was finally reached into a structured album that maintained its focus from top to bottom. Things Fall Apart was made available with a choice of 5 different front covers for only a limited period of time. One such cover displays a photograph taken during a riot in the Civil Rights Movement era. In the stark black and white photo, riot police are seen chasing 2 black teenagers on the streets of Bedford-Stuyvesant. In 2005, the cover was included in the book of the greatest albums covers of all time. Things Fall Apart was a manifesto of the Soulquarian sound, live instrumentation, warm analog textures, and a deep focus on rhyme and truth. October 12, 1999, Mos Def released his debut studio album, Black on Both Sides. Before Mos Def released his debut album, just a year ago, he released the first and only album with Talib Kweli called Mos Def and Talib Kweli are Black Star. The album was successful and garnered recognition for its live instrumentation and socially conscious lyrics. When Black on Both Sides released, it debuted at number 1 on the US Billboard 200 and US Billboard Top Rap Albums chart, and it placed number 3 on the US Billboard Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. It also sold over 78,000 copies in its first week, but eventually sold over 500,000 copies, making the album certified gold. Next is Q-Tip, a member of A Tribe Called Quest, released his solo debut studio album, Amplified, on November 30th, 1999. The album was released after the disbandment of A Tribe Called Quest in 1998, and most of the production was handled by Q-Tip himself and J Dilla. The album debuted at number 4 on the US Billboard Top R&B and Hip Hop Albums chart, and at number 28 on the US Billboard 200, selling over 89,000 copies in its first week, eventually going gold. Next came D'Angelo's Voodoo. If Brown Sugar was D'Angelo's introduction, Voodoo was his transformation. D'Angelo released Voodoo on January 25th, 2000. Voodoo debuted at number 1 on both the US Billboard 200 and Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart, and spent 33 weeks on the chart, selling over 320,000 copies in its first week. It debuted and replaced Carlos Santana's Supernatural at the top of the chart. It has sold over 500,000 copies within the first 2 months of release. After the release of Brown Sugar, D'Angelo went on a 4.5-year absence from the music scene and releasing solo work. In 1998, he was inspired to write music again after the birth of his first child, Michael, with fellow R&B singer and then girlfriend Angie Stone. The recording for Voodoo took place around 1997 and 1998 at Electric Lady Studios. Voodoo became the blueprint for neo soul maturity, dark, and unapologetically black. Its lyrics explore themes of spirituality, love, sexuality, maturation, and fatherhood. Tracks like Spanish Joint, The Line, and Send It On were dense and hypnotic. But it was a song, Untitled, How Does It Feel, that became immortal. The song Slow Burn, paired with D'Angelo's stripped down vulnerability, made Essential a classic. But the video and the media obsession that followed nearly destroyed him. D'Angelo never wanted to become a sex symbol. He wanted to be Prince, but with a deeper church sensibility, Marvin Gaye with more mystery. Yet, the fame around Voodoo became overwhelming. It marked both the creative peak and the beginning of the unraveling. After the release of Voodoo, D'Angelo decided to go on his second international tour called the Voodoo World Tour. The tour was sponsored by Levi's and D'Angelo, promoting to put an end to gun violence. Slum backed D'Angelo by a group of musicians called the Soulquarians. The Voodoo World Tour became one of the most sought out after and biggest tours in the year 2000. Starting on March 1st, 2000, and by July 2000, the first half of the tour had already been sold out in each city. Tickets were reasonably priced from $49 to $79, and this was in 2000. It's not like today where you gotta spend your whole paycheck just to see an artist half-ass their set and let the track rap the song for them. But in 2001, Voodoo won a Grammy Award for Best R&B Album at the 43rd Grammy Awards, which was awarded to D'Angelo and recording engineer Russell Elevado. The song Untitled, How Does It Feel won for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance and was also nominated for Best R&B Song. But the music video to Untitled, How Does It Feel had major repercussions in the second half of the tour. During the tour, female fans yelled out for him to take off his clothes, while others tossed clothes on stage. As trumpeter Roy Hargrove recounted, "We couldn't get through one song before a woman would start to scream for him to take something off. It wasn't about music. All they wanted him to do was take off his clothes." This led to frustration both on stage and off stage outbursts by D'Angelo, with him breaking stage equipment. Questlove later said he'd get angry and start breaking shit. The audience thinking, "Fuck your art, I want to see your ass," made him angry. Although some shows were canceled due to D'Angelo's thorough affection during the tour's mid-March dates, many shows were canceled due to his personal and emotional problems. According to Questlove, 3 weeks worth of the concert's dates were canceled, including 2 weeks worth of shows in Japan. He elaborated on the experience in a 2003 interview on The Believer, saying that, "I mean, everyone's insecure, but he's insecure to the level where I felt as though I had to lose myself and play cheerleader. Some nights on tour, he'll look in the mirror and say, I don't look like the video. It was totally in his mind. We would hold shows for an hour and a half if he didn't feel mentally prepared or physically prepared. Some shows got canceled because he didn't feel physically prepared, but it was such a delusion. He was like, they don't understand. They don't get it. They just want me to take off my clothes." Had he known what the repercussions of Untitled would have been, I don't think he would have done it. In the same interview, Questlove also said that he had not been fully compensated for his work on Voodoo, stating, "I didn't get the rest of my check." Several of D'Angelo's peers and affiliates have noted the commercial impact of Untitled, How Does It Feel music video and the Voodoo tour as contributing factors to D'Angelo's extended period of absence from the music scene after Voodoo. Next is Common. Common released his fourth studio album, Like Water for Chocolate, on March 28, 2000. The album debuted at number 5 on the U.S. top R&B hip-hop albums chart and at number 16 on the U.S. Billboard 200, selling over 70,000 copies in its first week, and it would eventually be certified gold on August 11, 2000. The Light, produced by J Dilla, is one of the most notable songs on the album, and is the one song most people recognize due to the iconic Bob acclaim. Common was finally ready to reach a broader audience, working closely with Questlove, Dilla, James Poyser, D'Angelo, Pino Palladino, and the Electric Lady Studios. He found a perfect balance between poetic consciousness and groove-heavy funk. The title, Like Water for Chocolate, comes from the 1989 Laura Esquivel novel Like Water for Chocolate, which was adapted into the movie of the same year in 1992. The phrase refers to someone who has to reach their boiling point like water ready to be used to make chocolate. In an interview with Combustible, the poet, Common compared the main character, Tita de la Garza, passion for food with his passion for music. Actually, the album is named after a movie of the same title. In the movie, the main character was a really good cook. She would always be cooking for people. Whenever she would cook, she would really put a lot of emotion into it. So when people would eat her cooking, they were able to feel the same emotion she felt while cooking it. You feel me? So this is the same thing. I put all my heart, my mind, and my rawness into these tracks. So I hope that people can feel that when they listen to the album. In an interview with MTV, Common added, "I first saw the title and thought that it was real interesting. And I was like, man, this is different. It made me think, what does it mean? And it was appealing to me enough to dig into a meaning for it. So I used like water for chocolate to represent the water side in me, which is a Pisces, and the chocolate represents the soul, the blackness in the music. Like water for chocolate captures the spirit of the Soulquarians in full bloom, black pride, musical with sophistication and community. It went gold, becoming Common's most successful album to that point and solidifying him as one of the key voices of his generation. On July 13, 2000, Slum Village released their second studio album, Fantastic Volume 2. The album received highly positive reviews and acclaim upon its release. The group themselves have since acknowledged the impact this record had, and while they benefited greatly from it, it has also overshadowed their later, though more commercially successful work. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any record of the album sales or charts, but to me and fans alike, this was a good album, especially the song Climax. I didn't even know J Dilla could spit a few bars. I always thought he was just a man making the beats and programming. But anyways, Climax is one of my favorite songs on the album, and this album deserves better recognition. Then there was Erykah Badu's Mama's Gun, recorded in the same overlapping sessions as Voodoo. Mama's Gun was Badu's most personal and grounding record, where Badu was unfloated in spiritual mystique. Mama's Gun was earthy, direct, and honest. The album was released on November 18, 2000, and debuted at number 11 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 3 on the US Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart, selling over 191,000 copies in its first week, eventually reaching platinum status just 4 weeks after its release. After giving birth to a son with Andre 3000, Erykah Badu began to experience writer's block after releasing Baduism in 1997, and in 1999 is when she began writing for Mama's Gun. Erykah's songwriting started to become more honest and more direct due to her experience with fame, motherhood, and separation from Andre 3000. Tracks like Didn't You Know, produced by J Dilla, and Bag Lady with his meditative groove, spoke to self-love, accountability, and the pain of healing. Bag Lady became a top 10 hit for Badu, peaking at number 6 on the US Billboard Hot 100, and earned her 2 Grammy nominations at the 43rd Annual Grammy Awards. She became the Soulquarian matriarch, wise, artistic, and ever-evolving. On February 2001, J Dilla released his first studio solo album, Welcome to Detroit. By 2001, J Dilla was already a legend among musicians. His fingerprints were everywhere, from A Tribe Called Quest beats, Rhymes and Life, to Like Water for Chocolate, Mama's Gun, and Voodoo. But Welcome to Detroit was the first time the world got to hear his universe on his terms. The beauty of Welcome to Detroit lies in its contradictions: futuristic yet retro, raw yet soulful, minimal yet orchestral. It was the bridge between the Soulquarians' live jam aesthetic and the underground beat scene that Dilla would inspire in the years to come. In many ways, Welcome to Detroit was a Soulquarian philosophy distilled into a solo statement: experimentation, freedom, and deep black musical lineage. But it was also prophetic. Dilla was starting to move away from the shared studio sessions and into his own world. The same energy that birthed the collective was now splintering into new directions. Coming out of Philadelphia, Bilal released his debut album, Firstborn Second, on July 21st, 2001. Bilal's debut was the last major Soulquarian project before the movement began to fade. Bilal was a new kid in the crew, a Philadelphia vocalist who could switch from falsetto to gospel raps in a single phrase. His album fused jazz, funk, hip-hop, and soul, creating something raw yet refined. Songs like Soul Sister and Sometimes showcase his incredible vocal range and daring songwriting, while Fastlane and When Will You Call hinted at the funk rock future he was reaching for. Though the album didn't achieve the same commercial success, it became a cult favorite, the sound of a fearless artist emerging from a community of innovators. On November 19, 2002, Talib Kweli released his debut studio album, Quality. Just like Mos Def, he was one half of Black Star. Kweli was already a respected lyricist from his work in Black Star and Mos Def, and Reflection returned with High Tech. The album peaked at number 21 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 6 on the R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. There is no actual data of how much the album sold during its first week, but it did sell over 500,000 copies in the US alone, making it certified gold. On Get By, produced by Young Kanye West and powered by Nina Simone's Cinnamon sample, Kweli delivers one of the defining songs of his career. The song balances urgency with uplift, reflecting the spirit of survival and resilience that defined both early 2000s hip-hop and the Soulquarian message. Joy, featuring Mos Def, is produced by J Dilla, stands as one of the most beautiful records of Kweli's career. It's a song about fatherhood, creation, and gratitude, a poetic reflection of life and legacy.
Yeah, I know how you feel. Kweli, I know how you feel. That's the sound of joy. Say, my brother, I know how you feel.
Quality was recorded in the aftermath of the Soulquarian peak, yet it sounded like the final transmission of that energy. It's polished but heartfelt, intellectual but accessible. Commercially, Quality was Kweli's breakout moment. It went on to become one of the most respected hip-hop albums of the early 2000s, especially at a time when mainstream rap was dominated by flash and excess. Critics praised it as a perfect marriage of classic soul sampling and forward-thinking lyricism. In hindsight, Quality feels like the closing credits of the Soulquarian film, the moment when everyone drifted to their own corners, yet the spirit still lingered in the music. It's the sound of the era's final breath, soulful, conscious, and timeless. By late 2002, the Roots had earned its place as the most respected live band in hip-hop. After Things Fall Apart, the group, led by Questlove and Black Thought, were seen as the intellectual anchors of the Soulquarian movement. But while that album had united the collective in purpose, their follow-up, Phrenology, reflected a world and a community that was starting to fracture. November 26, 2002, the Roots released their fifth studio album, Phrenology. The album debuted at number 28 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 11 on the US Top R&B Hip-Hop Albums chart, and remained on the chart for 38 weeks. By June 3, 2002, the album reached gold status. The title Phrenology refers to the pseudo-scientific study of skull shapes once used to justify racism, and that theme of deconstruction runs through the entire record. Love later reflected that Phrenology was the end of innocence for him as an artist. It was a realization that the magic of those late 90s electric lady nights couldn't be recreated. The industry had changed, the people had changed, the culture shifted towards digital production and faster consumption. The Soulquarians' analog, community-driven model couldn't survive that transition. Still, Phrenology stands as a testament to evolution, the point where the Soulquarian gene fractured, but its creative DNA spread outward into dozens of directions. You can feel that energy later in the Roots, Game Theory, Commons B, Dilla's Donuts, and even Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, A Storm of Rhythm, Intellect, and Rebellion. The final symphony before the curtain fell on one of the greatest artistic collectives in modern music history. On December 10, 2002, Common released his fifth studio album, Electric Circus. The album debuted at number 47 on the US Billboard 200 and at number 9 on the top US R&B hip-hop albums chart. The album was a major disappointment in comparison to his previous album like Water for Chocolate. The reviews were divided. Critics like Rolling Stone praised its ambition, calling it brave and visionary, while others dismissed it as pretentious and directionless. Commercially, it underperformed, it didn't go gold, and Common's image as a grounded, street-conscious poet seemed to evaporate overnight. Questlove in later interviews said that Electric Circus symbolized the end of the innocence of the crew, the moment when the industry, the internet, and the exhaustion caught up to them. D'Angelo had gone quiet, J Dilla was growing sicker, Erykah Badu was moving deeper into motherhood, Common was chasing enlightenment and love, but losing the grounded base that had made his earlier work resonate with the masses. By 2003, the Soulquarians' energy that once electrified Electric Lady Studios was fading, but in light of that, Erykah Badu released her third studio album, Worldwide Underground, on September 16, 2003. The album debuted at number 3 on the US Billboard 200 chart, selling over 143,000 copies in its first week, eventually going gold. While the album was underpromoted and sold less than her previous albums, Du's songwriting aimed towards more lighthearted and sincere feelings. Worldwide Underground was recorded with members of her live band, The Funkin' Bunch, who will later evolve into the Cannabinoids. The sessions took place mostly in Dallas, away from the New York City scene, giving the album a more grounded, earthy southern vibration. But it's very important to understand where Erykah Badu was at this point. She was a new mother, she was watching her closest collaborations just apart, and she was navigating fame on her own terms. Worldwide Underground became her way of reclaiming control, not chasing hits, but preserving the vibe that birthed a cultural revolution. For all the beauty and innovation that came out of the Soulquarians movement, there were always tension bubbling beneath the surface. They were creating art that changed the direction of black music, but they were doing it inside a music industry that was changing faster than they could keep up with. When Things Fall Apart, Voodoo, and Mama's Gun dropped, Labels didn't know how to sell them. By 2001, D'Angelo no longer wanted to be in the spotlight. Whenever he would perform on stage, ladies and women in the crowd would yell at him and scream for him to take off his clothes. They no longer saw D'Angelo as a musician for his art, his voice, or his message. Once fans saw the Untitled How Does It Feel music video, the whole world still continued wanting to see his body live during concerts. D'Angelo became an unwanted sex symbol and disappeared from the spotlight. He was in deep depression and alcohol use. By the early 2000s, Dilla was producing some of the most groundbreaking music in hip-hop history for Common, Erykah Badu, The Roots, Slum Village, Talib, and dozens of other musicians. But J Dilla was quietly battling a rare blood disease called TTP and lupus at the same time. Even as his health deteriorated, he refused to stop creating music. He moved from LA back to Detroit and built a small home studio where he produced entire albums while confined to bed. On February 7, 2006, J Dilla released Donuts. Donuts was praised to universal acclaim from music critics for his dense, amazing sampling and his perceived confrontation of morality, and has since become a cult favorite. In my opinion, Donuts is such a good album. The way J Dilla chopped up his samples and his drum patterns are well put and unmatched. Some of my favorite songs or beats from the album are Work on It, Time, The Donuts of the Heart, Glaze, and Don't Cry. His death didn't just end a chapter, it changed the sound of hip-hop forever. His swing, his timing, his warmth, all became the foundation for the next generation, from Kanye West to Flying Lotus to Anderson .Paak. By 2004, the cracks were too deep to ignore. Electric Lady Studios, once a temple, was no longer the creative hub it had been. The artists had scattered across the country, chasing stability, fighting demons, or simply trying to survive. The era of long studio sessions and spiritual jam sessions was over. Technology had changed the landscape too. Laptops replaced live bands, Pro Tools replaced analog tape, and the intimacy of the collective gave way to an era of isolation, where artists collaborated over email, not face-to-face. Now, it's not that the Soulquarians failed, it was that they existed in a window of time that can never be replicated. A moment where genius, resources, and community aligned perfectly and then passed on. In 2003, Questlove stated that there were no plans for a Soulquarian album release for the foreseeable future. Also, in 2015, Questlove blamed a September 2000 magazine photo and article from Vibe as part of the reason for their eventual split. The Vibe magazine photo was the beginning of the end, because when that issue came out, motherfuckers were angry. The issue started out as a feature about me. The people at Vibe had a clue that I was working on D'Angelo, Erykah, The Roots, Joe Scott, Bilal, Mos Def, Talib, Kweli, Common, Slum Village, and Nicki Cole's records. At the height of everything, I was working with 17 different artists. I was really gun shy on any unwelcome praise. I came from a commune. It wasn't a one-man act. I was very uncomfortable accepting a title or praise. I insisted to Vibe that they could get the story, but they had to make it about the family and not just one person. The thing was, we never had a title, but because the journalist was hanging with us the whole time, they were like, you guys keep saying Soulquarians all of the time. I explained the difference. I said that the Soulquarians were me, James, D'Angelo, and J Dilla. The Soultronics was a group we were putting together with D'Angelo. So when we took the photos and then I saw the Vibe cover it and said the Soulquarians, I was in Chicago when I saw it and I said, oh shit, this is bad. The next thing you know, every phone call that came in, people were saying, yo man, it looks like I'm working for you. I'm not an Aquarian, I'm my own person. Literally, that's when it all fell apart. Each member of the Soulquarians took divergent paths. Questlove doubled down on the roots, directing music for The Tonight Show, producing albums for other artists, and documenting hip-hop history. He became the archivist and historian of the movement, ensuring that the influence was preserved. However, D'Angelo withdrew entirely, returning only in 2014 with Black Messiah, an album many saw as a spiritual successor to Voodoo. It carried the same neo-soul ethos, but with sharper social commentary, proof that the Soulquarian flame could be reunited after years of silence. Common rebuilt his career with Beat and subsequent albums. The experimental lessons of Electric Circus informed his willingness to blend introspection with commercial sensibilities, a balance that allowed him to stay relevant without sacrificing artistic credibility. Erykah Badu embraced motherhood and spiritual exploration. Her later work, including New America Part 1 and Part 2, continues to push boundaries in production, lyrical content, and aesthetic experimentation, showing that the Soulquarian blueprint could evolve independently. J Dilla's death in 2006 left a void in hip-hop and soul. His final works, especially Dona, became an underground classic and a cornerstone for beatmakers worldwide, influencing everything from Kanye West to Flying Lotus. The swing, his sense of space, and his musical genius became the silent heartbeat of modern hip-hop production. Bilal with Love for Sale became a symbol of artistic integrity, a cautionary tale and inspiration for artists willing to risk commercial viability for creative truth. In the end, the Soulquarians era may have been brief, roughly from 1997 to 2005, but its afterglow continues to resonate. Every D'Angelo falsetto, every Questlove drum fill, every common lyric, every Erykah Badu spiritual chant carries their DNA. Even the next generation of hip-hop and R&B innovators walk on a path paved by the Soulquarians' courage to experiment, to fail, and to resist the limits of commercial expectation. They were a moment of pure creative magic, a constellation of artists who together reminded the world that music could be deep, soulful, intellectual, and revolutionary all at once. Side note, Kendrick Lamar's Pimp a Butterfly channels the jazzy, electric, and politically conscious energy of the Roots and the Soulquarian sessions. D'Angelo even considers Pimp a Butterfly his favorite hip-hop record of late. D'Angelo also added that the timing of both releases were kind of uncanny. Black Messiah, released on December 15, 2014, and Pimp a Butterfly, released a few months later on March 15, 2015. Two politically charged albums dropping 4 months apart. D'Angelo states that it was almost a sign. Motherfuckers are making some shit that's relevant to the times.